Welcome to Reseller Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 454, another themed episode.
That's right. We've got back-to-back theme episodes here, and man, we're not excited to talk about this one because there's a lot of
what a way to intro a podcast.
There's a lot of people who are burnt out, and reselling is a struggle for a lot of people, and so we actually are excited because we're going to be talking about, is burnout real, and how do we as resellers avoid this burnout and not get to that place where you just feel like, is this for me? Am I doing this wrong? Maybe I should just leave reselling altogether, which for some, that may be the right action to take. But we want to kind of make sure we're making wise choices.
Just don't stop listening to the podcast.
No, absolutely not, because we're going to be talking about, if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling that, if you're feeling like how I started the episode of like, I'm not excited about this anymore, make sure to listen to this, because hopefully we've got some tips and tricks and tools that you can use in order to help potentially avoid some of that reseller burnout. And right off the bat, one of the things that I think is really important to realize is a lot of people get into whatever side hustle they get into because it seems easy. They get into something because they think that like, this is my get rich quick thing. Like if I do this, I'm going to have passive income. I'm going to be making a bunch of money. I'm going to be able to like buy that yacht that I want, or at least not have to worry about my bills anymore. And the reality is reselling is simple, but it's not always easy. And I think a lot of people, they face that for the first time when they get into reselling, or they've been reselling a little bit and they start to realize that there's a lot of work and there's a grind and there's a lot of real effort that needs to be applied. And they think because reselling is simple, that it's going to be easy. And I'd like to use that example, simple versus easy, because there's a lot of things that are simple, right? Like running is a simple thing to do. It's one foot in front of the other, and you just do that over and over again as fast as you can. But it's not always easy for everyone to do. For some people, it's easier than others, depending on that. Have they conditioned themselves for it? Have they gotten to that place? But the fact that reselling is simple, and it really is, buy low, sell high, right? Like that's the golden rule of reselling. Buy items for cheap, sell it for more money than you bought it for. That's a simple thing to do, but it's not always easy. And that's actually a good thing. And it's a good thing, I think, that Pure Hustle Podcast from day one, going in 454 episodes, we have always said the exact same thing. We have never preached this as being your get rich quick, you're going to be making six figures overnight. We've tried to be real about it. That's why one of our sayings is real, relevant reselling, is we want to be real, because if this was easy, it wouldn't be real, right? There is no easy money out there. There is only sometimes simple things, but the fact that it's not always easy is what makes it realistic and makes it something that's actually attainable and scalable, and something that you can go from, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, to I can actually afford to go take my family on a vacation and my bills are covered, because there's this thing that's real that I can make money doing, and it's reselling. It's not, write into, some person and send them money and they're going to teach you the simple secret that's going to make you millions of dollars. It's difficult sometimes to do, but that's what makes it an actual hustle that's worthwhile, is because it's attainable. It's something you can do if you're willing to put in the work.
No, agreed. And it's so interesting because I just had somebody a few weeks ago. They were all about reselling, right? They're like, hey, can I ride along? Like, can we go sourcing? And I did. I did the whole thing. And, it's funny because it seems so easy, like you just said, like right off the bat, right? You watch these YouTube videos and people are sourcing and they're listing. But, I mentioned to this person, like, hey, I'm going to send you some materials. Here's how to list on eBay. Here's how to do this. And then in the end, they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. Right. And so I want people to be aware, like the burnout can happen from the very beginning. Right. I think what you need to realize is that, hey, if you're brand new to reselling, like it's going to take you some time. Like I would tell you right now, reselling for me is not hard work. Like it is hard work as far as getting out there and sourcing and listing and all that. But as far as like, I don't feel overwhelmed by like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to ship this. I don't know how to list this. I don't know how to deal with this message. Right. But in time that happens. Right. But it takes, you gotta like get through the tough times. You got to get through the tough conversations. You got to get through those scenarios that you never encountered. And once you get through that, you kind of get this place in reselling where it is still a grind, right? That's the thing. It is still a grind, but it's different. So let's talk about the reselling grind, right? It depends on the person, right? You can burn out if you're full-time, I would say way faster than if you're part-time. Because if you're full-time, and I can tell you this after being full-time for about 8 years and now being back to part-time, is that during that 8 years, like it was really nice the first 2 years. Like it was golden. It was nice. I mean, we started the podcast. I was doing a ton of Amazon stuff, like, you know, and there wasn't as much gating going on, and there wasn't as much competition. Like eBay was at a stage back in 2017, 2018 where like Harley Davidson, like you could sell shirts for like 40, 50 bucks a pop. You could like, it was a totally different game. Right. But not only that, it was new, right? It was something that I was like, you know, I'm going to go against the system. Like, you know, I'm against the man, like no more 9 to 5, like I'm done. Right. And I remember, you know, that was the reason why we had one of the names of Pure Hustle Podcast, right? That we will do whatever it takes, right? To be independent, to give ourselves time freedom. And things were great. 2 years, fantastic, right? Year 3, still good. Year 4, still okay. But then by year 5 and 6, where like your business really should be coasting, the economy hit, right? And things changed. And then not only that, competition began to grow, right? Not only that, sourcing was even more difficult. And so there's a lot of things that began to play out. And I remember like over time, you could, if you listen from episode 1 until now, you will see this drift that happens to me over time where, you know, I begin to get a little bit more negative. I begin to say sales are always slow. I begin to say that, you know, eBay is working against us. Like things do begin to change. And the reason being is that reselling full time requires you to always be working, like at all times, it doesn't matter, right? Because if you don't source and you don't make those sales, you're not going to be able to pay your bills. And that can get really taxing. But this is why it gets taxing. If it becomes something that you were just in it for the money, I think it becomes really difficult. I really do. That's just my thoughts, right? And we'll talk about this, about the why of why do you resell. But I think if all you are doing is, hey, I'm just going to do this because I love the money, eventually that love will fall away. Eventually you're going to go like, maybe I could find other ways to do this thing. You'll begin to burn out. And it kind of leads us to the other thing I wanted to talk about. The reason that I was thinking about this was because I was listening to Gary Vee again. I'm kind of I'm returning to Gary Vee. Like Gary Vee was great for like 3-4 years. I kind of got annoyed for a little bit, and now I'm like, there's some good stuff being said out there.
You're back to that hustle. I don't want to use the P word here, but the hustle candy, that's what we'll call it, like that hustle temptation.
You know, the reality is for whatever, and maybe it's because it's brand new, right? Like I'm back in administration. I'm trying to build a school. I'm doing it, and it's different, but yeah, there is that excitement, right? And I hope this excitement, you know, I think it's going to last forever because this is something I've always loved doing. But, you know, Gary Vee says it's not that you get burned out. He says, there's a quote here, says, if you're burned out, it's because you're chasing someone else's dream. And I thought that's interesting with reselling, right? Because they're not necessarily dreams, but sometimes you watch these people, right? And I remember initially before I became a full-time reseller, I used to be like, man, how awesome would it be if I could be like Rake and Profit? How awesome it could be like if I was like Bonafide Hustler or Reezy Resells, like all these guys, right? That like they were in dire circumstances and they put in that grind and they became those next level resellers. Not only that, they became those next level like reselling influencers, right? And they made it happen. And, you know, you can get caught up in watching these YouTube videos. You can get caught up in doing all this and you want to be just like these people. And it'll be great for a little while, but I will tell you, eventually you're going to realize that like you can't source like they can source. They maybe make their profit because of YouTube, not because of what you do. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day. Who was I talking to the other day? That had told me, I can't drop names, but there's a big YouTuber out there and we're talking about like, you know, I'm just going to give the modest number of over 50K subscribers. They have way more than that. And for them, like from the very beginning, it was never about reselling. From the very beginning, it was about like, hey, can I get into this niche and can I grow this niche? And if I can grow this niche, then I just resell to make money. Meaning that like you've talked about this before, like one garage sale video, right? Maybe they spend 3 hours, maybe they edit 5 hours, maybe they spend, $10 to $20 on garage sales, or maybe even $200, but they make far more on that video, right? So you got to be careful, right? That you're not trying to be like those people, because in the end, their whole point wasn't maybe reselling, and you're thinking like that's what their point is, that's what they're doing, and so you try to emulate that, and then you feel burnt out because you're like, hey, I'm not making it happen like those people. Does that make sense to you, Mike?
Yeah, it does, and I think there's something to be said there for that. I think I know what you're talking about is like motivation versus, and I know you hate the word, but like discipline. And I think what it comes down to is there is that mindset of like, hey, I'm passionate about what I'm doing. Maybe motivation's the wrong word there, but like passion. If you're passionate, like of course, all of those like hustle videos and influencers, that's kind of their big sticking point is like, if you just got to be passionate. If you're passionate about what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. Those types of phrases and ideas. And there's something to be, there's something, sorry, something just hit my garage door. Hopefully my kids are okay.
Oh man.
And again, so anyways, I think there's something to be said about that idea of like, if you want to do something you're passionate about, but not everybody's always lucky enough to do that. And I think in some ways, if you mentioned if you're in love with money, right? Or like that's the goal. I think that can be somewhat superficial, but if your goal is like, you know what, I want freedom. I want financial freedom. I want physical freedom. I want, time freedom, whatever your freedom is that you want. I think, and I always point back to like Jocko Willink, because I think he takes like the opposite end of the spectrum here, is like the need for discipline, right? Because if you're like, you know what, my goal is to provide for my family, pay off my house, make sure that, my kids are taken care of, that medical bills are paid, then it could be cleaning toilets, it could be reselling, it could be whatever it is. As long as I'm succeeding at that thing, I'm crushing it enough, and I do it right, I'm going to get the freedom that I need. I'm going to get that freedom that I want. If that's what you're passionate about, is getting that freedom, so then that's where that discipline can come in, where you could say like you wake up, because you're not always going to wake up and feel like I want to do this. I love to do this. And I think that, yes, like passion is important, and maybe you're pushing, and you're like Gary Vee said, you're looking for somebody else's dream. Hey, I want to sell, vintage clothes because that's what Orlando's doing and he's making a bunch of money. And that might just not be what you're interested in and good at. But that doesn't mean that you have to like completely walk away from reselling and say like, oh, I don't have this passion in this one thing somebody else does. I'm chasing that dream. But I think that's where discipline comes in, where you say, you know what, I'm going to just be ultra disciplined in order to make this happen and push through the difficult times. All right, guys. So sorry about that. If you're watching the YouTube video, probably dropped out for a minute there because I was still talking my whole speech about discipline and the importance of discipline. And I kind of got a little bit messed up there because my internet cut out. And so the podcast got messed up, but the audio is still recorded, so we're going to be good to go on that. Hopefully everything I said about, discipline being important, maybe that's a good thing, because Orlando didn't get to jump in and disagree with me there. So, discipline equals freedom.
Are you editing the YouTube after this? I'm just making sure, because there's just this awkward, like 30 seconds of my face.
No, yeah. I'll it'll just be a blank. It'll be a blank screen for while I'm speaking and my internet cut out. So we're good.
Okay. Just trying to think. Hey, we keep it real on the podcast. I mean, we've done 454 episodes. I would say we've had only things like this only happen maybe like 10 episodes out of the 454.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, my internet's been spotty today. We've had a lot of storms going on, so hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so we just wrapped up talking about, the discussion of like, it's not necessarily that maybe you're burnt out. It's maybe that you're trying to chase someone else's dream, as Gary Vee would say. And you had spoke on that. Now let's talk about some of the signs of burnout, right? What are some signs you can think about, Mike, when it comes to burnout?
Yeah, I mean, without sounding like I'm talking out of both ends of my mouth here, when it comes to burnout, it's when you have that lack of discipline and the things that you used to do, not only are you have no motivation to do them, whether it's shipping on time, whether it's going out and sourcing, whether it's listing items, but you're just simply not doing those things, right? Like if it's been a while since you've been sourcing and you're finding every reason to not do it, and you're not being disciplined to say, you know what, I don't feel like listing today, but I'm going to do it anyways. That's a good sign that maybe you've reached a point where you're experiencing that reseller burnout, where you're actually facing what am I going to do? And I think that's when you're at that pivotal crossroad of like, is this the right thing for me? Am I making good choices. And I think reflection is always important. We should constantly be reflecting and determining whether or not we're making the right choices and things we're doing. But the question comes down to, am I doing the right thing? Or is this just, I need to push through this? Because we all go through seasons of, I'm just not as passionate or interested, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't push through, right? Because a lot of times I heard one good like suggestion is just do something for 10 minutes. 'Cause a lot of times that's like what your brain needs. If you're like, hey, I don't want to do this, assignment. I don't want to work on my taxes. I don't want to list whatever the fill in the blank. Just tell yourself, I'm just do it for 10 minutes. I'm just going to take pictures of items and list for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to be done. And a lot of times that's enough to get you going. So a lot of times it's just that initial hurdle of, I need to get momentum, because momentum is what carries you, right? Like if you're moving, you're going to keep moving. It's when you've reached that point where you've stopped and you're like, you know what? I haven't been sourcing. I haven't been listing. I might be facing burnout. And so then you're at that pivotal crossroad of like, what do I need to do here? Maybe I need to just take a week off from this and reflect. Maybe I just need to push through it and keep going, because if I just list the 10 items today that I don't want to list, or if I just go sourcing, maybe that's all I need to get over this hump. And what I'm actually facing is just like a temporary obstacle that's really not as big as it seems to be.
No, I agree. And, I will tell you from my own experience, like, everything I wrote here in our notes was me. Like, I got to a point where I would even ship stuff on time, right? Because I was like, hey, can I get away with shipping this a little later? I don't want to deal with it, right? Or I wouldn't go. Now, this last year, the reason I didn't go sourcing was I was in the middle of a move. I was also helping out of school. I just didn't have the time, so I didn't go sourcing. But I have gone long time without listing, right? Even as a full-time reseller. Like, that's not good. Like we just talked about, like, the necessity of constantly moving, right? Constantly doing things as a full-time reseller. So you never want to put yourself in danger. But be careful, right? Like, especially when you get to a place where you're not caring about the metrics. You're like, oh, who cares about my feedback? Who cares about my late shipments? Who cares about my defect rate? Like, that to me is a sign of burnout. And I think that's a time for you to step away and go like, okay, why am I feeling like this? Why do I not care? Right. And the second part of our podcast today is going to be talking about how to fix that possible burnout that you have. But before we do that, just wanted to talk about my Reseller Genie. So one way you don't have to burn out is with trying to track all your numbers. And my Reseller Genie is reselling software made by resellers for resellers. It allows you to track your profit loss, have a Schedule C, import all your stuff, your shipping costs, your fees and all from eBay and Poshmark. So when it comes to tax time, you don't feel burnt out because you have all the information you can hand over to your tax person and you're good to go. And the way to do this, the best way is get that first month for 15% off and use our code Pure Hustle. You put our code Pure Hustle, you'll get 15% off the first month of my Reseller Genie. Definitely check them out. All right. So the first thing I would say, how do you fix this, right? How do you fix this issue of burnout? I would say, what is killing you? Like, what is the thing the most that you're hating here, right? Is it you hate the shipping process? Okay, if it's the shipping, then what are you shipping? Like, should you ship to something else? Like, I think about, like, right now I have a big item that there's nothing in me wants to pack it and ship it. Now, I'm not burnt out, so I'm going to take care of it. But if I had a ton of those items, I would be like, I'm done, right? Maybe you've been doing clothing for a while and you're tired of, like, maybe your back's hurting, or maybe you're tired of, having to point out all the flaws, or maybe you're tired of dealing with the question. Then maybe it's time to pivot, right? Maybe you end up doing like glass stuff, right? And you're like, oh, I'm tired of floating the box. I'm tired of how fragile things are. I'm tired of the returns. I'm tired of the damage that it's caused. Like, you figure out, maybe it's sourcing. Maybe you're going to the thrift store all the time and you're just like, I'm done with the thrift. Maybe you got to figure out another way to source. Like, I don't know what that is for you, but there is something that is holding you back, that is causing you, you still love reselling, but you hate the reselling that you're doing. You need to pivot that and, like, figure out what that is.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And that kind of goes back to that, the idea of you got to spend some time reflecting. I think a lot of times in every aspect of life, I feel like most people don't. Like, that's going to be what sets winners apart from people who don't win, right? Is
from losers?
Yeah. Well, not
people
even just
that don't win.
but it's not even just losers, right? Because losers has the connotation that, like, there's always like super negative consequences for something. But there's a lot of people who are just floating, right? Like they're just existing. They live these quiet lives of desperation, right? Like they're just kind of, they do their thing. And what sets apart the people who are actually super successful are the people who are willing to step back and reflect and say, where am I at? Write it down. What's working? What's not working? What's causing me anxiety? Where am I getting my wins at? What do I do to fix it? Write down those 4 or 5 things. Okay, where do I want to be in 5 years? Write down those things. What do I have to do to get there? Am I doing those things now? Right? I would say most people know what those things are instinctively. Like they just know, like, if I could fix this one thing, I'm going to be up at the next level. Or if I could fix this, I would be here. So most people know, like, I could probably be your psychologist and you could spend a bunch of money to sit and talk to me for hours and hours and hours for me to tell you what you already know. But I feel like most people already kind of know what that thing is. But most people don't spend the time to actually like sit and think and figure out, what do I need to do? What are the steps I need to take? And yeah, you're right. You got to figure out what is it that's holding you back? And then how can you pivot to make sure that you're actually moving in the right direction? And then that kind of moves into our next point here, which is you got to build systems. And this goes again back to that idea, Orlando, you wrote it out as build systems, but again, I'm going to use that word discipline, right? Like if you've got that system in place where you say, you know what, where I'm really struggling is with listing. And so I'm going to eat the frog. Going back to that old metaphor of like, do the most difficult thing first thing in the morning. When I get up and I before I even eat my breakfast, I'm going to list my 5 things. Maybe I'm listing 20 things today, but I'm going to list 5 first thing in the morning, right? You get that win, you build that system. We talked about that book, Atomic Habits, right? And it's building habits on top of habits. And if you just know, when I drink my coffee in the morning, I'm searching Facebook Marketplace for items that I want to source. And that's just what I do. And you build that habit in, and then you don't have to worry about, well, now I've got to build the habit of sourcing on Facebook. And it's like, no, you already have a habit, drinking your coffee every morning or whatever that habit is. So build another habit on top of that. So build those systems, be disciplined to do those things and follow up on those things. And the only way you're going to know what those systems are is going back to the previous point, is you actually got to spend the time to figure it out. Like figure out, what is it that's holding me back? What are the 1, 2, 3 steps I can take that's going to take me to the next level? And then what's the worst that you have, like what's the worst that can happen? Like you spend a half hour figuring out what are the steps you need to take. And then you know what the systems are you need to build. And you say, you know what, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks. Worst case scenario, maybe I'm burnt out. Like I'm ready to throw in the towel on reselling and say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Okay. I'm going to take the 2 or 3 steps that I know could make a difference. I'm going to do it for 2 weeks. I'm going to see what I feel like afterwards. And if all of a sudden you're seeing your store starting to come back up, you're starting to get some motivation because you're getting the cha-ching throughout the day, all you have to do is to gain is benefit, right? Like you're going to have benefits come. And if no benefits come, you're not in a worse place than you were before. And you could say, well, 2 weeks later, I did the thing. I took every step I needed to take and I still feel burnt out. Then you can make a better choice instead of just acting on emotion or lack of emotion.
No, agreed. And when I say build systems too, like just have things in place, like, very simple things. Like if you're the kind of person that like something sells and your shipping stuff is everywhere in the house, like, oh, I got some shipping boxes in the closet over here, my tape is over here, like you don't have a shipping station, like that may cause you to burn out, especially as things begin to ramp up, as you ramp up your business. If you don't have a photo booth, and you don't need a photo booth anymore, I would say, but if you don't have a place where you take photos, right? A set place, a designated place, right? So like kind of keeps away from you. We talked about, we had that one person that said they quit reselling. They were happy to get all the crap out of their house. That's exactly what they said, right? If you have a ton of stuff all throughout your house, like, your mind's cluttered. Like it's miserable. Like one of the things I love about, now that I moved up to the Bay Area, and I actually didn't have that much of a problem either back in San Diego, but I did have some inventory that was in my living space at times. Mike can attest to that. But where I'm at right now, like I have no reselling stuff for like absolutely none in my reselling area, like 0. Like you would never know I was a reseller unless you went down to my garage. Like that's the only place I keep my stuff, right? And that system, like it's not like a system, but that kind of decluttering, right, allows me not to feel overwhelmed, allows me not to feel burnt out. And as a full-time reseller, we have the tendency to like just have reselling dominate every part of your life, including your own living space. So build system, meaning build like a place where you ship stuff, build where you source, not where you source, but where you process what you source, build where you take pictures, like have that system in place. So then, like, hey, from 3 o'clock until 4 o'clock, like this is where I'm going. This is exactly how I'm going to ship. Here's all my supplies. Here's my tape. Here's everything in play. So you don't feel overwhelmed. Like, because I got to tell you, if you are in a place where every single time you got to process your stuff, and then, you got to like move clutter to process, and then you got to move clutter to take pictures. Then you got to move clutter to ship items out. You're going to be miserable. I'm speaking from my own experience. Mike can tell you, like, he's seen the podcast room and how it was that we never showed you guys on camera. But back in San Diego, it was crazy how much stuff I had in there. And it was very overwhelming. And I was glad to be done with that. So remember that room?
Yep. I would say fondly because the podcast was always a lot of fun, but man, it was cluttered. That's for sure.
That it was. And the nice thing was in the the original podcast room, we really didn't have any of that. I mean, you had some stuff in there, but it was pretty organized most of the time, so it was good. All right.
That's right.
So we got Bill. Oh, you know what? We're almost to the halfway point. It's time for us to talk about some hustles of the week.
That's right. Hustle of the week.
Is it a new one? Good stuff.
I hit the wrong sound. It's fine.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I don't think we've played this one ever, have we?
Oh, we have. It's been a while because I think I only
Okay.
played it one time and I didn't love it. I like the old school hustle of the week sound. So,
Okay.
anyways, for those of you who may be new to Pierce Podcast, every single time we have a themed episode, we do our hustles of the week, which is our opportunity to share the wins from the community, right? Like, what are the things that people are finding, sourcing, selling, their big wins? Because one of the things that can really help prevent burnout is when you have,
My son, I'm recording the podcast.
Hey, that's all right, man. We're keeping
Keep
it
it
real here.
real.
Right. So our first hustle of the week comes from Flip for More from Instagram. So Flip for More picked up a vintage Sony High MD mini disc Walkman for $20 at an estate sale and listed on eBay as a parts or repair only and sold for $190 plus shipping. Good grief, man. That's the best. I mean, I love when it's old vintage electronics and you can list it for parts. That's 9 times out of 10 when it's old stuff like that, unless it's new in box. If I don't have the time, energy, motivation, or know-how to like really test every feature, I'm just going to list for parts and repair like that. And that's one of the ways too that I even check for comps, right? I'm going to see what is it selling for parts or for, in that type of condition. And if the comps are still good, I'm going to pick it up. And for $190, what a great find. I love that.
What I love is the parts and repair. Like, that's what I love, right? Because, very easily people like test it and I'm pretty sure they're at the estate sale and they're like, oh, I'm not going to pick this up. Like, this isn't worth it. And then you look it up and you're like, parts and repair. Like, imagine if it was all good. I wonder what it would sell for, obviously for a lot more. But I do love that vintage stuff. Were you around for mini discs? You might have been. Yeah, you were like a child probably when they came out.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Hey, this next one, this comes from Miss Maven from the Discord. Says, if you come across Dragonlance books, they are great sellers and highly collectible. I picked up all these up at a library sale and still have a lot of left. I paid 50 cents each for them. Sold 14 books for $450 plus shipping. Yeah, and I did some research. Man. It's like Dungeons and Dragons kind of deal. Something like that. I don't know enough, but yeah.
Hey, Bolo, be on the lookout for Dragonlance.
There you go. Like, no, I would say I'd look up any of those like medieval kind of books because you never know what you're picking up. So yeah, that is a nice hustle of the week.
Yeah, especially anything vintage like that. I've started listening to. I do a lot of audiobook, especially because you can get them cheaper too a lot of times than the physical books. But I've started listening to the old Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
And that author for those, and he's kind of the inventor of that whole genre of like the sword and sorcery genre. with some of those books that he wrote. So yeah, anytime you're looking at old vintage sword and sorcery type books, yeah, there's money there for sure. All right, our next hustle of the week comes from at Thriftzilla on Instagram. So picked up a bag of miscellaneous cars at a thrift store for $4.49. One of the cars was a Mr. Drippy from Pixar Cars 3. Mr. Drippy finally sold 48 days later, was initially looking to get $60 plus, but someone bought it outright, even with the missing side mirrors, for $85 plus shipping.
Ooh. We're talking about a little diecast car, by the way. We're not talking about like anything crazy.
Man, you can get some good drip with that Mr. Drippy car.
Thank you. And shout out to Flip for More and Thriftzilla, real ones from the very beginning of the podcast. Thriftzilla was actually our first hustle of the week. We talk about that all the time. I remember how awkward it was. Like, hey, can we share your hustle of the week on the podcast? It's like, what is that? So anyways, thank you, Thriftzilla. Thanks, Flip for More, for always supporting us. And Miss Maven, thanks for being on the Discord. By the way, before we move on, in case you're wondering, like, what is this Discord? Okay, so there is a Pure Hustle Podcast Discord, and the way you have access to that is via our Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Pure Hustle Podcast, you can jump on in for $5.55 a month. $5.55 a month. That gives you access to hundreds of resellers, anywhere from vintage clothing to vintage books to Amazon arbitrage, like you name it. And we have different threads on there. We have an Amazon thread. We have a we have Hustle of the Week. We have, I don't know, is it Fails of the Week or whatever it is? Like, we have place that people can rant. We have place that people can talk about shipping. There's all kinds of threads on there. So if you haven't yet, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Pure Hustle Podcast, or go to the link below. And as always, you can find us on all social media. We are Pure Hustle Podcast on every social media except for X. On X, we are Pure Hustle Cast. If you ever want to shoot us an email, you can shoot us an email at purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't yet and you're listening to the podcast, jump on over to the YouTubes, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and click on that bell notification. And as always, grateful for all of you that leave us reviews on iTunes reviews. If you have not yet, please do so. Would love to be there. We are the biggest reselling podcast out there and the most reviewed podcast, and it's because of everyone out there that supports us.
All right. What about you, Orlando? Do you have a hustle of the week?
Yeah, I have a hustle of the week. You know, it's just interesting with the hustle of the week because I got to tell you right now, I almost had a big one, and I mentioned that like a couple episodes ago, where I almost sold a guitar for $2,000 something, and then like the person never paid, which was kind of disconcerting. But
almost doesn't count, man.
Almost doesn't count. But I'm happy about this one, and I paid, I don't know, maybe a couple bucks. Do you remember those old, like, remember during the era that you couldn't leave your homes? Do you remember the Indo red balance boards? Do you remember those things? Like these, I don't know. It was like, you know, like there's that black rolling thing, and then there's the wooden board, and
like a fitness.
Yeah. And I remember I made a ton of money on those things like back then. But I guess people are still looking for it. I mean, I paid like a couple bucks, and I sold one for $75 plus shipping. And it's crazy because the shipping is going to cost like around $40 to $50. So in the end, they paid around $150. I paid like a couple bucks for it. The wood looks kind of worn, like it's not, you know, the paint isn't there, but you know, I'm glad to get rid of stuff from the previous era and still make good money. This was one of those things where I was like, hey, do I want to transport this with me from San Diego to the Bay Area, or do I want to just like donate or give it away? And I was like, you know what, somebody will buy it. And I was happy because somebody bought it, right? So in the end, making about $70, not too crazy, but we'll have a crazy hustle of the week to share in a couple of weeks in our next hustle of the week. I usually try to wait 30 days because I want the item not to be returned. Right, so I don't mention it until everything's done. But really happy about that sale, and I'm grateful for it. But if you look, here's the thing: we're talking about burnout, right? And I look here at all the different resellers. Like I've known Flip for More for years, and he sells all kinds of stuff. Like he's willing to, like, he'll sell lawn furniture, like I mentioned in the previous episode, or he'll sell clothing, or here he sold some vintage electronics. And for him, I don't think it ever gets old. Like that guy's always hustling. Okay. You have Miss Maven, right? Very familiar with Dungeons and Dragon books. It's kind of her niche. That's what she likes. keeps her from being burnt out. And then Thriftzilla has always done toys. By the way, check out his YouTube, Man of Many Toys. Again, that's his YouTube, Man of Many Toys. Mike, did you know Thriftzilla had a YouTube channel? If you don't, now you know. But check out Thriftzilla, Man of Many Toys. He's always selling, toys. And I got to tell you, that guy has an eye. So check him out. But the reason I bring this all up, okay, is because I truly believe one of the ways to prevent burnout is source items that you really like. And if you can source items that like you take joy in sourcing and you enjoy picking those up, I think that'll make it a lot easier. Mike and I always talk about those examples of VCR DVD players. Like, we loved the money in the beginning, but in the end, it just was not enough to keep us interested. And so we have stopped doing those. All right, Mike, looks like we're getting here closer to discussing how to fix that creep of burnout. So what about setting boundaries? Do you set boundaries in your own reselling life?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly boundaries for sure. I mean, you got to know what's the purpose behind what you're doing, right? And if it's, I have a full-time job. I go to work and I work long hours as a teacher. And so reselling is something that I do in order to make extra money, in order to try and pay my house off faster. But it's never going to take priority over my children. It's never going to take priority over my family. And so I get up early in the morning to work out because I don't want to give up family time. And I get a lot of my listings done then. I give up some Saturdays for garage sales and thrift stores. But if my son has a game, I don't prioritize reselling. Now, if reselling was my full-time job, that would look a little bit different, right? Because I'm already gone during the day, Monday through Friday from, 7 o'clock to 4:30, I'm already gone. So if I was a full-time reseller, I would have to prioritize reselling a little bit more, especially like during those hours, or pick your hours, right? You've got freedom with that. But I definitely do have boundaries in that sense of I could face burnout if I'm giving up things that are important to me, like family time, in order to just make more money, right? And then that would cause me to start really hating what I'm doing with reselling. If I had to miss another soccer game and I had to miss this and not go on vacation and do those things, then I would be like, what's the point of me doing this, right? Like, why am I doing this? And so I definitely have some boundaries. And again, it's going to look different if you're full-time, if you're part-time, and the purpose behind what it is you're trying to achieve. Everybody's life situation looks a little bit different. If you're a single individual and you're in your early 20s, maybe you grind a little bit harder. If you've got a family, maybe one of the ways to prevent burnout is to make sure that you're actually the reselling. Yeah, that reselling is a tool and an avenue that you're using in order to better your life, and not one that you become a slave to, right? One that you end up just, you give up everything in order to be better at reselling. And so having those boundaries helps. And I think, setting this is when and how I'm going to do it, and sticking to that is definitely very crucial.
No, and what I mean by boundaries too is like, hey, only set up certain times to do things, right? Do not let it spill into other parts of your life. Like, I remember in the beginning when I was doing a lot of part-time reselling, like my sourcing was only Wednesdays, and it was Wednesdays from 6 to 8, and it was Saturday from 6 to 1 or whatever it was, and that's it, right? Because what I found was, like, if I'm always like trying to source and I'm always trying to look, like, eventually, like, you can get tired out, right? Or if I'll never forget, like, when I was a teacher, like, I was always on my phone sending offers. I was always on my phone. Well, you couldn't send offers back then, but accepting offers, or I was sending messages, or I was researching. Like, I was always about eBay. And it was great when I was part-time and I can kind of disconnect. But when I was full-time, like, I struggled with that because that's all I was doing all the time. So you got to be really careful about that, you set those boundaries like, hey, I'm going to spend time with my family right now. Reselling is not going to consume my life. Right. So we talked about earlier about physical boundaries, right? Like not making sure that your inventory does not overflow into like your living space. But I would say mentally too, like you can't let reselling consume everything. Mike and I, one of the things I always laugh about is when we went to eBay Open 2019. By the way, I'm looking to being there live at eBay Open. I'm hoping that eBay will provide the opportunity for me to speak at eBay Open. So we'll see about that. I'm going to reach out to them. But one of the things, we were on a panel about social media and reselling, and they asked Mike specifically, like, hey, so what YouTubers do you watch that do reselling? And Mike actually gave the answer I didn't think he would give. He said, I don't watch anybody. Like I actually, there's other avenues of my life that I enjoy, and that's what I listen to. And I thought at first I was like, come on, Mike, you got to like sell it. Right. But then I was like, no, that's profound. Like Mike established this boundary that like, hey, reselling is already a larger part of my life. And so maybe while I'm listing, I'm not, you should all be listening to Pierre's podcast. But if you want to, like, listen to something else, find something else that's enjoyable, right? So you're not always feeling like all you're doing is reselling 24/7. All right. And here, our last part is, I think it's time to reconnect with the why. Like, why do you resell? Like, what are you doing? Right. Are you now in a place where like, it's not like before? Like I remember when initially I was reselling, especially full time, it was so I could be independent. So I could not have to ever go back to the 9 to 5. So I never had to answer to anyone. And then over time, that kind of changed. Right. I mean, obviously, right. I mean, now I'm not in a place where I answer to many, but the reality is that like now, I don't really want to do full time because I don't feel that need, right? I don't have that pressing desire. But my why now is like, hey, I got a kid. You got to get through college, right? I got a lifestyle that I've kind of been able to be afforded because reselling. Not that I live like wealthy, but I get to enjoy things a lot more than I used to when I was only teaching, not reselling, right? The fact that I resell allows me to do many things I never could have done before, right? So understand that, or maybe your why is like, hey, you like the time freedom, right? So if you're part-time and you're feeling burnt out, maybe you're burnt out because you have two masters, right? You're trying to do something at your regular job and you're trying to resell and you're up late hours. And maybe it is time to consider going full-time because maybe your why is like you want that time freedom, but you thought you would get that time freedom, but now you're just working all the time and there is no time freedom and you don't have that ability. So think about the why, like, why are you doing it? Because I'm a big believer in anything that you do. There has to be something more than that paycheck to get you motivated to consistently do things well.
Yeah. I mean, because again, money is only as good as what you're going to do with it. Right. And the reason why people work so hard to get money, sometimes it's because they just want to be comfortable. Sometimes it's because they want financial freedom. They want time freedom, whatever it is. And it's the same thing with reselling. You want to know your why. And, I'll go back to some of the things I said earlier in the episode, as far as like writing down, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I heard something one time, by somebody on like an Insta reel, and it was so good. Essentially it was the do that, right? Like sit down and write out like if you could have the life you want to have in 5 years, like what would it be? What would you have to do to get there? And then do the opposite. Like, if I don't do these things, if I don't fix these things, what's the hell that I'm going to be living in 5 years? Right? Like you're either moving forward or you're going to move backwards. And it's like, sometimes you almost need that aspect of your why too. Like why and where am I going? And then what's the alternative? Like, if I don't do this, if I'm struggling to pay medical bills for my family, if I'm struggling to, be able to enjoy life and take my kids to places they want to go and to provide my wife the things that I think she deserves and to live in a neighborhood I want to live in, all of those things. So don't just look about where you're going, but where could you end up if you don't achieve those things? And sometimes by running away from the thing you need to run away from and run towards the direction you want to go, that could be enough to be the motivation to get that discipline you need to make the right choice. And maybe it's reselling. Maybe it is, hey, right now it's really tough for me and I can push through it. Maybe it's not reselling. Maybe it's like I need to go full tilt in another direction in my life. Maybe I need to go back to school and get my degree so that I can, join this job, or I want to become an electrician or whatever it is. Like you got to know where you're going to end up going. And when you have that why, you have all the motivation you need. Because when you wake up and you're like, I don't feel like listing, but then you walk out your front door and you're like, I can't live in this neighborhood any longer. Or I don't feel like listing, but then you get that bill in the mail and you just want to sit and cry at your kitchen table because you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this bill. Like whatever those situations are, when you see those, then that's all the motivation you need, right? Like, why am I doing this? And for some people, I think where you struggle the most with this is when you're in that comfortable zone. Like maybe you're making enough. And so the thought of pushing and scaling, the cost benefit analysis isn't there. It's like, why should I push and scale further to get to where I don't necessarily feel like I need to go? So maybe you're not burnt out, but maybe you're already comfortable enough, and this is where you need to stay. Maybe you're like, this is a good spot, and I don't need to keep pushing forward, because then, like Rolando said, you get stuck serving two masters. Now I'm devoting all my time for extra that I don't even want or need.
Yeah, you just gotta be careful. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the rest of this podcast, and I appreciate every single one of you. And hopefully, you're not feeling burnout. I will say though, if there's ever a time to like pivot, summer is a great time, right? You can pivot, and you can get ready for Q4. So definitely take advantage of that. But thank you for all of you for tuning in these summer episodes. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling.
Peace.
From garage sales to thrift store aisles, we hunt for treasure, stacking them in piles. Hustling hard, making deals all day, flipping finds, turning profit our way. You hustle